Hello, my name's Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist in London. I assess mentally disordered offenders. I also work as an expert witness, so I give evidence in criminal trials all across the UK. CrimeCon is coming to the UK. It will be full of experts such as myself and also law enforcement agents. There'll also be your favourite YouTubers and podcast makers. So I really hope to see you there.
Deep in the hills of Arkansas, an army of extremists plot to overturn the U.S. government. They spread a doctrine of hate, murder, and genocide. Launch death raids on churches and synagogues, bomb public utilities, and gun down a state trooper. Federal agents must dismantle the radical renegades without inciting a bloody war.
In 1984, a tragic murder led agents into the frightening world of domestic terrorism. Law enforcement vowed to dismantle the violent faction that claimed responsibility. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The radical group pursued a doctrine of racial cleansing, an attack on basic American freedoms. The FBI's quest for justice escalated into a brutal showdown, pitting agents against terrorists, fueled by hate.
June 1984, Sevier County, Arkansas, a rural area along the Oklahoma border. Winona Bryant drives south on U.S. Highway 71. Winona is a teacher at a local high school. She's traveling with her children and her nephew to meet her husband for lunch. He is Lewis Bryant, an Arkansas state trooper. He patrols this stretch of highway. Along the way, Winona spots a police cruiser on the side of the road. She recognizes the ID number.
That's Dad's car.
Lewis is nowhere in sight. Something's wrong. Winona tells the children to stay in the car.
Stay in the car.
Then she sees him, covered with blood.
Lewis? 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 Oh my God, Lewis! Oh God!
Winona struggles to stay calm as she uses the police radio to call for help.
Officer down! Officer down! Please, somebody! Officer down! Somebody!
She tells the dispatcher that Lewis is unconscious. It looks like he's been shot.
Just get somebody here! He's been shot! Please!
The Arkansas State Police dispatcher alerts all police frequencies that an officer is down.
Interstate 71 North, 2 miles north.
Passing motorists stop to help.
Officer down.
Winona can feel a faint heartbeat, but her husband isn't breathing. She administers CPR until county authorities arrive. Paramedics rush Bryant to a nearby hospital, where he is pronounced dead. Trooper Lewis Bryant was a respected veteran of the Arkansas State Police. He leaves behind his wife, Winona, and their 2 children. Within minutes of the shooting, the DeQueen, Arkansas Sheriff's Department receives a frantic call. A driver on Highway 71 reports seeing a brown and white van leaving the scene. It was pulling a homemade trailer. Police in Broken Bow, Oklahoma spot the van heading west. The driver refuses to stop, but police force him to the side of the road. As officers converge on the van, the driver pulls out a rifle and starts shooting. Police strike the suspect in the shoulder. He pulls out a .45 caliber pistol and continues firing. Officers hit him 4 more times, finally forcing him down.
See your hands. Go over on your belly.
Police search the wounded suspect and find a driver's license identifying him as Richard Wayne Snell of Stephenville, Texas. At a nearby hospital, police question Snell. The suspect confesses to shooting the state trooper. Snell tells police he has outstanding warrants in Texas and he was trying to escape arrest. As Bryant approached the car, Snell opened fire. Agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation search Snell's van. They discover a metal box containing a .22 semi-automatic pistol and a grenade.
He's absolutely over to you. Tell me something I don't know. Get a shot of that.
They also find suspicious wires attached to the underside of the steering wheel column, leading to the air conditioner vent.
We got wires going into the
They fear the van is booby-trapped. Investigators call in a bomb squad from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Technicians carefully examine the vehicle. After several tense moments, they conclude the van is not rigged to explode. The search of the vehicle resumes. Investigators find several more weapons, including a MAC-10 machine pistol. They also find literature printed by a group of white supremacists called the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
You're labeling them all the same. So
The group advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government. In their literature, they call for the murder of government agents and the extermination of Jews and blacks. Police call in Agent Bill Buford of the ATF. Along with other federal investigators, Buford has been trying to establish a criminal case against the CSA for nearly 2 years. Looking for evidence, Buford makes a chilling discovery.
In the van was a briefcase. And in the briefcase was a lot of notes that this individual had put together, different maps. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was a map, apparently, of my house. The street it was on, the different houses that surrounded my place. And that caused me a little consternation, to say the least. It was later established that they had also been doing surveillance on a federal judge, a U.S. attorney, an FBI agent. for whatever reason, whether they just wanted to know where we lived or whether they were anticipating retaliation for some whatever. That's just left up to one's own imagination, I guess.
Buford examines the weapons retrieved from the van.
One of the things that came to my attention almost immediately was that the MAC-10 had a silencer on it.
The silencer is homemade but sophisticated. Bill Buford believes he has seen one just like it, confiscated just 3 months earlier. In early April, Missouri police caught 3 men stealing a flatbed trailer. In their possession were 3 .45 semi-automatic pistols, 1 sawed-off shotgun, and 1 MAC-10 converted to fully automatic with a homemade silencer. According to an informant, all 3 men are members of the CSA.
The 2 silencers looked exactly the same. And I felt like this might be a break if we could determine that these 2 silencers were made by the same people and were able to establish that they had come from the CSA compound.
5 days after the shooting, on July 5th, 1984, Trooper Lewis Bryant is laid to rest. The funeral is attended by then Governor Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and over 1,000 police officers. Governor Clinton makes the investigation of extremist groups a priority.
Is to set up a group comprising members of both districts under the chairmanship of Colonel Goodwin to work on these cases.
State and federal agents probe deeper into Snell's connection to the CSA. The murder weapon in the Bryant case was a .45 caliber Colt Commander. 18 months earlier, the gun had been stolen in a deadly pawn shop holdup in Texarkana, Arkansas. The owner had been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Ballistics analysis shows a bullet recovered from the victim had been fired by a .22 caliber Ruger, the same .22 Ruger found in Snell's van. According to records, the leader of the CSA purchased that Ruger 4 years earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Agents now have enough evidence to subpoena the leader of the CSA to appear before a federal grand jury on gun charges. Bill Buford heads to Mountain Home, Arkansas to deliver the subpoena to the CSA leader at his 200-acre compound. Informants and surveillance indicate that the compound is heavily fortified. Several structures dot the surveillance photos. Agents know the compound is inhabited by the CSA leadership and approximately 65 men, women, and children. They know little else.
Sentries out, about in front of it, stop us, do our checking.
ATF investigators had become aware of the CSA several years earlier. The organization had evolved from a religious group into a violent right-wing militia.
When ATF began to really think that this was more than just a Bible study group was when we were aware of the large number of right-wing organizations that were coming in and doing the paramilitary training there.
About another 150 yards up.
According to informants, extremist groups such as the Aryan Nation, the Posse Comitatus, and the Order frequently visited the compound.
They're watching us tight, so...
A few low-level members of the CSA had been arrested for firearms violations. But the leadership of the group had always managed to evade prosecution for all but misdemeanor offenses. Buford hoped today would mark the beginning of the end for this dangerous organization. Agent Buford meets a man at the front gate who identifies himself as Kerry Noble, the group's second in command.
He went into the compound, and a short time later he came back and said, well, the leader of the group will meet with you, but only you, and you have to go down unarmed, and I have to search you to make sure you haven't got a gun on you.
Buford agrees to turn his weapon over to another ATF agent. He allows himself to be searched. He knows that going into the compound alone and unarmed is dangerous, but there's no other choice.
If one of the people that was working for me or one of the agents under my supervision had wanted to do it, I wouldn't have let him do it. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing.
The stakes are too high. The group is too dangerous. Buford needs to show the CSA that federal agents will not be intimidated. In Arkansas, State Trooper Lewis Bryant is gunned down during a routine traffic stop. Investigators discover weapons connecting Bryant's killer to a group of violent white supremacists calling themselves the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
Oh, we got a grenade. Got another hand.
ATF agent Bill Buford enters the group's heavily fortified compound to deliver a subpoena ordering the group's leader to appear before a federal grand jury. The ATF agent enters alone and unarmed.
It was kind of an awesome sight. At first glance, it looked like just a community there with a number of buildings. But as you looked closer, you saw that these buildings were all rock structures, very well made. If you looked closely, you could see that there were bunkers dug around the compound itself.
Buford confronts the CSA leader face to face.
I got a subpoena in my jacket.
I explained to him that I had a subpoena from a federal grand jury in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that he would need to appear on the date on the subpoena.
The subpoena concerns weapons involved in the murder of a state trooper. Investigators have traced some of the weapons back to the CSA.
How do I know I'm not under arrest? I'm not arrested.
He asked if he would be arrested. I assured him that a grand jury appearance was all this was. That was not an arrest warrant, that he wouldn't be arrested.
The leader takes the subpoena.
Okay.
His men escort Buford out of the compound. When the CSA leader eventually appears before the grand jury, he denies knowing Richard Wayne Snell, the man who confessed to the murder of Trooper Lewis Bryant. He also claims no knowledge of how weapons traced to him ended up in Snell's possession. On November 1st, 1984, Richard Wayne Snell is found guilty of capital murder in the shooting death of State Trooper Lewis Bryant. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the same day, Snell is charged with the murder of a pawn shop owner in Texarkana, Arkansas. In the winter of 1985, the FBI, the ATF, and the Arkansas U.S. Attorney's Office turn up the heat on the CSA. FBI Special Agent Jack Knox has developed a key informant who claims the CSA is involved in acts of domestic terrorism.
He outlined what he referred to as road trips in which he and two other members of the CSA were assigned by the leader of the CSA to take in search of businesses or establishments to plunder, or Jewish establishments which they might attack.
According to the informant, 2 years before the murder of the Arkansas State Trooper, several CSA members had set fire to a Jewish community center in Bloomington, Indiana. The informant claimed that at about the same time, the CSA firebombed a church in Springfield, Missouri that welcomed gay members. He also claimed that 3 months later, the CSA attempted to bomb a major natural gas pipeline in Fulton, Arkansas, to disrupt supplies across the Midwest. They were unsuccessful. The pipeline was not damaged. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve Snyder could see a dangerous pattern emerging.
There were what appeared to be random acts of violence. After this individual talked, they no longer became random acts of violence. They became part of a plan to strike out against the United States and attempt to disrupt the activities of the United States and its citizens.
The CSA had evolved from a religious cult into a group of domestic terrorists that had declared war on the United States. In March 1985, a second informant, a former member of the CSA, provides more information about the organization. He gives details about firearms and explosives being manufactured and used by the group. He tells investigators there is a machine shop in the compound where the CSA makes grenades and silencers and illegally converts semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic. He also claims the group has obtained a powerful anti-tank rocket, commonly called a law. The FBI informant reports that the CSA is building an armored tank and that landmines have been placed around the perimeter of the compound. He also provides a laundry list of interstate offenses committed by the group, including transportation of stolen vehicles, mail fraud, and theft of government property. Based on the informant's statements, the U.S. Attorney pursues a warrant to search the CSA compound for illegal weapons and explosives. Assistant U.S. Attorney Snyder intends to use RICO, a federal racketeering statute, to prosecute the CSA. The statute enables authorities to arrest and convict leaders of criminal organizations based on a pattern of illegal activities.
The RICO statute carried a statutory maximum penalty of 20 years, as opposed to the weapons and firearms violations, which carried a lesser penalty. So it was a more severe crime.
If I can show you this bigger map, maybe.
Investigators discuss how to best serve the warrant.
Again, this is the compound.
Bill Buford opposes a kick-in-the-door approach.
It was obvious to me that we were dealing with a very militant organization. They were not, in fact, going to just roll over. If we walked in and say, hey, we're the federal government, we're here to look at your compound, they weren't going to allow us to do that.
To reduce the risk of a violent battle, the FBI would employ the newly formed hostage rescue team to serve the warrants. The HRT was established in 1982 as a counter-terrorism unit to work both inside and outside the borders of the United States. In 1985, Special Agent Danny Colson is the commander of the HRT.
The HRT basically are assaulters. It's their job to go into a crisis point and neutralize terrorists and rescue hostages. But this was not that type of situation. These people were very well armed, they were very formidable, and we wanted to avoid a shootout.
Colson establishes a command post in nearby Branson, Missouri. The HRT is composed of 2 elite teams.
Basically, you had a sniper element and you had an operator element. The snipers were responsible for gathering intelligence to give cover to the operators, and the bulk of the team was made up of operators.
Agent Buford, who has been inside the compound, briefs Colson on the layout, the main gravel access road, the front gate, and where the property borders the shore of a man-made lake.
Now, this gate's gonna be very heavily
The first phase of the operation is a reconnaissance mission.
You cannot command and control a crisis situation unless the commander's done a recon. He has to go in and see the ground. He has to know what the structures are like, where they are relative to each other, and what the best avenue of approach to get there in the shortest period of time is.
Tonight, Coulson and his team will be the uninvited guests of the CSA. In Arkansas, local and federal authorities believe an extremist group is involved in domestic terrorism. They call themselves the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The FBI's hostage rescue team prepares to enter the terrorists' heavily fortified compound.
Where the compound is or anything else? Last chance.
HRT Commander Danny Coulson briefs the reconnaissance team before they go in. The recon team's job is to gather intelligence on the group's infrastructure, its buildings, manpower, and weapons, while avoiding the CSA's armed patrols. ATF agent Bill Buford will act as the HRT's guide. He's been inside the compound and knows the layout.
I had been doing so much work on the CSA and had spent so much time in the woods out around the compound that I had a good idea of the terrain, the fortifications on the compound, and had drawn up a raid plan myself as to what I felt should be done in order to execute this safely.
FBI Special Agent Danny Coulson knows the CSA is well armed and dangerous.
These individuals had assault rifles, they had night vision capability, they had an excellent communication system, they were well trained, they practiced their tradecraft, which means marksmanship.
Still, Coulson has every faith in his team.
The HRT has excellent patrolling skills, and it was just a matter of relying on our training. You move very quietly, you move very slowly, you crawl on your stomach, you stop and you listen, you look, and you rely on your senses. We would send a person on point. He would scour the area and glass it with thermal imaging gear. You listen to the noise of the forest. If something interrupts that, you know that somebody's there that's not supposed to be.
The team spots CSA guards patrolling the compound. They're armed with assault rifles.
We finally signaled it was safe, and we moved the rest of the patrol in. And we sort of leapfrogged in and out, and we had a rear guard to be sure that nobody came around behind us. The thing that was concerned most about, of course, is the law rocket. You don't have to be a real good shot with a law rocket to kill a lot of people. It'll take out a light tank or a bunker, fired into my perimeter, could have killed my agents.
The recon team finally makes its way to the main compound. CSA members, as well as their families, are asleep inside some of the buildings.
The assault team leader needed to know what the structures looked like in case we had to breach them. So you have the possibility that there could be a suicide pact with these people. They might start killing their children. That's happened before, it's happened since then. And so we had to be prepared to go in there to rush in and save innocent lives.
From the reconnaissance missions, Coulson now knows exactly how the CSA compound is laid out and what needs to be done.
Well, the thing that the recon really reinforced was that we don't want to assault these guys. I mean, if we had to, we could do it, but there would be great loss of life on their side and possible on our side.
The compound sits on over 200 acres of land. If Coulson hopes to resolve this without bloodshed, he'll need a lot more men.
After we saw how expansive this facility was there, I knew that 50 men could not hold that perimeter.
Coulson calls for an additional 200 FBI agents from field offices across the country. He needs to sneak them into the small community without tipping off the CSA. Knowing Mountain Home, Arkansas is famous for its sports fishing, FBI agents disguise themselves as fishermen. They check into fishing camps located along the river. The plan is to use fishing boats to approach the compound at its weakest point, from the lake. As agents prepare to move on the compound, Coulson briefs Special Agent Clint Van Zandt of the FBI's hostage negotiation unit.
You've got about 5 options in any type of situation. You can contain, isolate, and negotiate. You can contain and demand surrender. You can use snipers, you can use tear gas, or you can use a direct tactical assault and just overwhelm them with manpower and firepower. In these last 3, people die.
The decision is made to contain, isolate, and negotiate. Danny Coulson is the point man on all 3 phases of the operation.
This man's using himself.
I came to believe rather quickly that the leader of CSA is not going to want to negotiate with a lower-ranking FBI negotiator. He's going to want to talk to his tactical equivalent. In this case, it's going to be Danny Coulson.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I'm a tactical person. I had been a sniper, and I'd been a SWAT team member and a SWAT team leader and trained as an operator. And I was not trained to be a negotiator. And I didn't know that I could pull that off. I'd much more comfortable going in after the guy than trying to talk him out.
But Van Zandt convinces Coulson that he's the right man for the job.
I had viewed a lot of negotiations. I mean, every time a tactical team is deployed, a negotiator is deployed with them, so I'd seen it done. And basically, Clint Van Zandt taught me some negotiation strategies and techniques.
After 10 days of reconnaissance and planning, Special Agent Danny Coulson and the FBI hostage rescue team are ready. Over 200 law enforcement agents prepare to surround one of the most dangerous and heavily armed outlaw militias in the country. In 1985, the FBI closes in on the CSA, a paramilitary organization in Arkansas. Members of the group are suspected of domestic terrorism and murder. Over 200 agents, led by the FBI's hostage rescue team, make their move. HRT snipers and operatives deploy across a lake that borders the compound. Their mission is to establish a rear perimeter. Additional HRT units fan out in the woods, flanking the main compound. The ATF, along with the Arkansas State Police and the Missouri Highway Patrol, set up roadblocks. Their job is to prevent any CSA supporters from entering or leaving the compound. Overhead, an FBI surveillance aircraft called the Night Stalker cruises at an altitude of 50,000 feet. The plane's onboard thermal imaging system monitors movement throughout the compound. FBI Special Agent Danny Coulson.
You could see everything going on the ground. We saw CSA people standing and talking to each other in little groups around the compound. We could see every animal, every deer, every coyote, rabbits running around on the ground, which gave me a tremendous advantage because I could use this vehicle, this airplane, to help me set my perimeter. They could maneuver my people around listening posts. They could maneuver my people around patrols.
Coulson directs the mission from a command and control vehicle near the front gate of the compound. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt, an FBI hostage negotiator, advises Coulson.
It was very prudent to go in at night and to have them wake up the next morning and find that we had walked literally right up to them without them knowing it. We could have come all the way in, but we didn't do it because we want to resolve this peacefully.
HRT snipers surveil the compound from positions inside and near the main gate. Within 10 minutes, they report that 2 men are exiting the compound and approaching their position.
Sniper 1 to command post. Roger. Instructions, please. Have individuals coming out of the compound gate.
Stand by.
Standing by for instructions.
And I radioed back and said, do they know you're there? He said, no, they haven't seen us yet.
The sniper tells Colson that one man has an assault rifle, the other has a sidearm.
Individuals getting closer, command post. Instructions, please.
Colson instructs his men to confront the CSA guards.
I said, you hail them, you yell at them and tell them you're the FBI and tell them to go back inside.
You copy. Tell them to get back inside the compound.
The message it sends is that we could have got you, but we chose not to do it. Basically, we are here in force, but we come in peace.
FBI, back in the compound, now! FBI, get back in the compound! Move, move! Move, move!
I wanted them to get in the habit of following my orders or the orders of my team and to show them that we weren't there to hurt them.
We're hearing from the tactical agents that there are lights, that there are activities within the compound.
We'll go with you.
No, you better stay back here.
Moments later, another man walks out of the compound.
Who's out here?
I instructed them to let him get close, and I wanted 2 operators to take him into custody.
FBI, freeze! Don't move! Freeze!
I didn't order him back in because I wanted to start the dialogue. It's time to talk now. Sometimes one of the most difficult things about a standoff situation is finding somebody to talk to. You don't always get them to talk to you initially.
The man identifies himself. He's Kerry Noble, the deputy commander of the CSA.
The first thing I said to him is we need to start a dialogue and talk about resolving this thing peacefully. We're not here to hurt anybody. But you're not getting out. And if you start a war, we're going to end it.
Noble says he will convey the FBI's request to talk with his commander. At daybreak, federal agents and local police have completely surrounded the compound. The news media somehow gets hold of the story and converges along access roads. Agents establish a direct telephone line into the compound. A short time later, Agent Colson receives a call.
The operator called me over and said, it's him. And it was the leader.
Yellow. That's right, I'm in charge of it.
And essentially said the same thing that I'd said to his deputy, is that this is the FBI, my name is Danny Colson. We have a warrant for your arrest.
And the only way it's going to happen...
The leader agrees to come out and talk on one condition.
Hold on, sir.
That he will not be arrested. Otherwise, his people will put up a fight.
Okay.
Colson agrees to the terms.
5 minutes. I'll see that.
Van Zandt prepares Colson for the meeting. As an expert in behavioral science, Van Zandt believes the CSA leader will only respond to another commander.
As a military commander, I said, you wouldn't be carrying a long gun or rifle in this type of meeting, but you'd have your 9mm pistols. You'll meet his expectation as to what our FBI tactical commander should look like. He'll be more open to dialogue, more open to negotiations.
Colson approaches the main gate.
You should always look like you're in charge. But also, you have to bring him out. You have to get him to talk. It's not just you walk up and give demands, you get him to talk to you.
Tensions mount for a possible violent confrontation. FBI snipers train their sights on the CSA leader and his guards.
And you have to understand that this is a man who thought we were literally from the devil, that we were agents of the devil, So trying to create a bond of trust on a road with two armies facing each other with awesome firepower is a difficult thing to do.
Colson tells the CSA leader that the FBI is there to confiscate grenades, assault rifles, the law, anti-tank rocket, all illegal weapons stored in the compound.
And eventually,
I really didn't describe the forces. I just said, we're here, we've been here, we know what's going on in there, and at this point I wanted to remain the faceless enemy. What I got from him was dialogue, which is the most important thing. But what I didn't get was capitulation. He didn't agree to do anything. He just agreed that they would go back in and pray about it.
Well, I respect that.
We'd agreed earlier if he came out that he could go back in. And that's very important. You have to keep that trust.
Colson and Van Zandt have no choice but to honor their agreement. They allow the leader to go back inside the compound. The first day and night of the siege passes without incident or resolution. On day 2 of the siege, the CSA commander requests another meeting. This time, he appears in full battle dress.
Changing clothing is a big deal. When the leader of CSA puts on tactical clothes, he's taking the presence of a tactical commander.
The leader of the CSA tells Colson that there are people inside the compound who are prepared to launch an assault and break out.
My patience was wearing really thin at this time. And I said to him, who are you going to fight? You've not seen us, you don't know where we are. We are going to use deadly force on you if you come out with weapons and come onto my perimeter. Who are you going to shoot? You haven't even seen us yet. How are you going to shoot us? It's like you're fighting ghosts, and you won't even know who kills you. You need to come out of there.
Now you get in there and convince them to get out of here right now.
The leader tells Colson he is prepared to come out, but he can't control everyone in the compound.
And he said to me, I need help. He said, there's a man that's our spiritual leader, and I need his advice, and I need his help to convince people that's the thing to do to come out. And I said, who is this? He said, it's Robert Millar.
Robert Millar is a well-known figure in the secretive world of right-wing extremists. It's an unusual demand. But to Van Zandt, it's a turning point in the negotiation.
This situation was either going to be resolved by bullets or it was going to be resolved by trust. Bullets or trust, what's it going to be?
For Colson, it is the moment of truth. He knows that if the shooting starts, there is no telling when it will stop. In the mountains of Arkansas, over 200 law enforcement agents surround an armed compound. Inside are a group of violent right-wing extremists, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The leader of the CSA demands to see Robert Millar, their spiritual leader. FBI Special Agent Danny Colson decides to use Millar to help persuade CSA members to leave the compound.
This is something totally against FBI policy, to bring in a Confederate into a crisis situation, not just to negotiate, but to go inside. And this is a huge risk. And I thought it was worth taking, given the risk that we were facing.
The FBI flies Millar in from Oklahoma. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt tries to convince Millar that it will be in the group's best interests if he helps bring the standoff to an end.
I said, you know, if you're able to do this, if you're able to resolve this peacefully, you'll be known as the peacemaker within your movement. I said, I don't say that to win you over. I say to tell you that you've got a lot riding on this. And you could see the wheels turning. It was at that moment I thought, he's flipped over on our side. He's on our side, he's going to do it. This was all the chips. We're saying, we're going to bet on this guy that he's going to drive home the message that Danny and myself and everybody else has been delivering for the last 4 days, Now, he's got to close the deal.
Quite a mess out here, it looks like.
And he called on the field phone. And Millar said, well, I'm in here talking to them, but I really haven't got anything resolved. They said, okay, you got another hour. Well, really, we couldn't control him. What were we going to do? Go in and grab him by the neck and rip him out of that compound where there was 50 people with guns inside? So you had to be real careful of not, you will be out of there, because then it would have been apparent we were an empty suit. We were a paper tiger, and we couldn't be perceived as that. So it had to be, well, I really need you out of there in an hour. And he called back in an hour, and he said, I need more time with these folks. I think I can do it. I've got them coming along, but I need more time. And we just reconciled ourselves that he's going to stay there the night.
On the morning of April 22nd, day 4 of the siege, Millar and the CSA leadership exit the compound. For the first time since the beginning of the standoff, there are no armed men with the CSA leader.
They came out and they said, we have an agreement that we will surrender. We will come out and we'll give up our arms and walk out peacefully.
Colson receives the news with guarded optimism.
And I said to them, that's a great decision, but I want you to understand that this better not be a ruse for an escape attempt, because you will not survive it. This better be a surrender.
Colson gives the leader 15 minutes to gather his people and bring them out.
And very shortly after, I get a communication from a sniper team that they're coming. They're coming out. The snipers report that they're in civilian attire. There's no camis, there's no battle gear, there's no weapons they can see.
The siege is over. Not a single shot has been fired.
It was an ending that we had all prayed for, and one that we were very fortunate that we had.
ATF and FBI agents carefully searched the compound, accompanied by the deputy commander of the CSA, Kerry Noble. Over the course of several days, they recover hundreds of automatic weapons, homemade hand grenades, and landmines, as well as detonator boxes and plastic explosives. Agents find a Law anti-tank rocket near the leader's house. They find 30 gallons of cyanide stored inside steel drums. Agents believe the CSA intended to use it to pollute municipal water supplies. Investigators also find a steel-plated armored car equipped with a fully automatic machine gun. At trial, the leader of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord is sentenced to 20 years in prison for federal RICO violations. Kerry Noble, the CSA's deputy commander, receives a 5-year sentence for firearm violations. Today, he speaks publicly about the dangers of hate groups and destructive cults. Richard Wayne Snell, already serving a life sentence for the murder of Arkansas State Trooper Lewis Bryant, is found guilty of murdering a pawn shop owner. He is sentenced to death. On April 19, 1995, at 9:16 p.m., Snell is executed by lethal injection. Today, the CSA compound is little more than a collection of abandoned shacks and stone ruins.